All right, hello, welcome to the Southbound Sports Show. I'm your host, Richie Leahy. Going through a new software here, trying to see if we can get better quality for some of our call-ins whenever I get a hold of Matty B. So we're going to see if he can go ahead and hop on in the middle of football camp this week. And so hopefully the podcast can improve sound quality right before we get ready for football season, but this might be a couple week trial depending on how I guess it's not really the quality, but just how convenient and I guess how well it works. There's a couple of different ones we're going to try because we were using Microsoft Teams, and honestly Microsoft Teams, it seems like the quality has dipped ever since Skype. We were using Skype, that seemed to go well. But lately with Microsoft Teams, it seems like they're messing with Matt's audio and I can't get it EQ'd or cleaned up a bit. It just sounds like it's all muddied all the time. And so we're going to try to improve that because we got some big content coming up with football season getting ready to kick off. So now we have the AP poll came out for college football. But before we get into that, the NFL has confirmed, or I guess it's not really a confirmation here, but they went ahead and said that games, or not really games, but teams outside of the United States is pretty much going to happen. It's more of a matter of when, instead of just waiting to see how long it will take. And where? I think the commissioner's out in Germany, maybe. And so I was wondering how far that travel would be. Because if someone's getting ready and they're going from the United States for a game all the way in Germany, it's going to be a flight no matter what, compared to there's no local teams. And that's why I had speculated that my thought would be they would go ahead and try to put a team inside of the, I mean, I don't even know, I guess, the Britain's not in the EU anymore, but inside like the Europe zone, most likely I would think of London just based on how many games they have there. I still think that teams are going to go ahead and probably move away from regional or city locations, although on the baseball side of things, I'm hearing that they really want to kind of double down on that, but it makes sense because baseball has so many games compared to football where you don't want to just limit it. A lot of times you run into people, Cowboy fans or kind of Universal Steelers fans. No one's really yelling like, yo, Pittsburgh, here we go. Or Dallas. No, they're going to just say Steelers or Cowboys, and that's pretty much going to be it. So it really doesn't matter where they're located. Now, do I see those teams leaving? Most likely not, right? But if you have some type of flex arrangement where, think of like basketball teams or in the preseason where they kind of float around. I know with the Steelers preseason kicking off, it's still hard for season ticket holders to go ahead and get rid of some of those tickets. They make the season ticket holders pay for them, but then there's like no interest in those games. So you're kind of stuck. You can't sell them or make your money back unless you sell them for cheap. And there are people that sell them for cheap. And so if you want to go to a preseason game, people are going to pay full price for that. But that's what the NFL has kind of baked in. And shifting towards more of a 3-game season is a little bit easier of a push compared to going from a 4-game preseason into a longer regular season. Almost to the point where, do they really need a preseason anymore? College football doesn't have it. The NFL already has inter-squad scrimmages that have been inter-squad practices that are coming up or that have happened where, they're already doing like their training camp and that sort of thing. The only downside with getting rid of the preseason is you're going to have some players that need to get more reps to get in the game shape. But again, does it really matter? Does it matter if your best players aren't playing their best at the beginning of the year because no one's going to be playing their best. It's more of an even ground where we've seen players that get held out for preseason. They come in rusty and it takes them a couple games to get spun up. But the rest of the team that had been playing in the preseason, they're ready to go. Now everyone would be on the same level playing field. And don't tell me that they need it to go ahead and get more game film on some of these guys trying to make the roster, right? It doesn't really matter. Now with like the UFL, which I think is what the name they went with for the spring football game, now they have a place for people to play and kind of get that real game time rep against other preseason level players. And so if they don't make the team based on just training camp, take a step back, play in the UFL the next year, go back into training camp after that, then you might already have a spot where you're ready to go. And I'm not sure how much further you want to go from that to have a gap in the summer, because you're going right now from the NFL draft to the UFLs going on the entire time, because they go from college, have a little bit of a gap. I think they started in March this year. So if you go from March, NFL draft, season ends in May, get about a month off before everyone. And I mean, they have mandatory or non-mandatory workouts anyway. So those players would automatically get to just keep going. And they would show up hopefully with a little bit of an advantage because they've been playing. And it's sort of like a time break for them to get back into shape or to rest up a little bit, get healthy. I mean, not so much get back into shape because hopefully they're already into game shape from playing from those games. But if the NFL is trying to shift and trying to bring extra teams in from overseas or from like Germany, and they don't have like an NFL Europe hand anymore, at least I don't think they do. So where are you going to get those type of players? You're really pretty much just going to have a team there, and then you're just having Americans. Like, you're not really going to get international players, where like basketball, to me, the NBA is really missing a point, I feel. Maybe the countries don't want an NBA team over there. But if you can get some high level, you already have the international player base. Countries already have their teams. We see college guys coming out. And if they don't make the NBA, they're signing international contracts and they're playing ball overseas. If the NBA would just pick like more of a world type approach, and I know they play a ton of games too, that's why I think it would make sense for them to definitely have multiple, or at least a division where the division goes in. Because could you imagine the West Coast or the Western Conference in the NBA where everyone just assumes that they're stronger because of how recent history and stuff like that? What if those strong teams were in like the European bracket? Would it get more international type coverage and viewership similar to the World Cup? Just with the volume of games, you can get away with it. Where if you could land like 5 teams over there, you'd have four teams that you could rotate through. And heck, if you needed to even get to 6 or something, they could do 36 teams. I don't even know how many the NBA has. I think it's 30. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's 32. But if they had 6 over there, you could do 6 divisions of 6 teams. And the way you could do scheduling to limit travel is have you play your own division like 3 or 4 times a year, whatever, and then slowly rotate through the rest. Whatever you would need to do to get to that number of games. And maybe you need to play your local teams more so that you're not really killing the players in terms of travel and having their bodies rest. If the NFL really goes to Europe with only 1 or 2 teams, yeah, they have less games, but you're still going to have, okay, are they training over there? Is training camp in Europe? And then the players live over there, but then are they returning back home? Since most of them are probably going to still be American players in the off season, and you're really only getting a couple months away, like back with your family or players moving over there. I just wonder how it's going to affect free agency, because to me, I think that would be a real big thing. you're going to have a tough time to compete if you have to overbid for players because they don't want to uproot their family and move to another country when realistically, like, you're the only one there, like, right? So maybe if they could get another similar thing, you play a handful of European teams and you play them twice a year, because what does the NFL have, like 4 teams in a division now? If you could uproot 4 teams, move them over there, play them in 6 games a year or over there plus your home games, makes it a little bit easier in terms of having support, other professionals that you could like hang out with in the offseason, that type of stuff, or even in training camp. A little bit easier to find guys that wouldn't have to travel as far to do things. Like right now, a lot of players go to like Florida or whatever to do there. They're all like off-season training type thing. Their routine. And how far do you go with that? But let's go ahead and see what other NFL news we have out there. Because I don't think right now we have the games going on, preseason week 2 coming up. Don't really take stock into preseason week 1 because not a lot of players have been playing. So now we're into the point where we have teams getting ready, and that first game is September 9th. So we're a little bit over, a month away or less than a month away now. And so we're closing in on what should be a pretty good season. I don't think we have any favorites this year over the top. At least I don't. I know you had the Seahawks. A lot of people figured that was going to be a fluke season. Right now, the Rams looked like they're going to be the power team. But again, you have a Matt Stafford that's old. He's a year older. I was surprised when the NFL put out like their loaded roster list for the year, like who has the best roster to the worst roster. I think the Steelers were like 4th. And to me, I was just kind of shocked by that because I think they have the same issue as what the Rams have. You have a super team coming up with like an old quarterback, and the Steelers to a lesser point. Is it really even a super team? Not so many weapons, right? And an old quarterback, and then a defense that's not even as good. I think a lot of the Rams stuff was dependent on if Aaron Donald comes back. Because I think if he comes back, then you're into something where, okay, that's going to be going forward a point that can be made of how far can a team push towards the Super Bowl before having to blow it up. Because a guy's already retired. You have Matt Stafford. He's probably closing in on retirement. On the Steelers side, you have Aaron Rodgers closing on retirement, reunited with his coach, McCarthy. You have a lot of players that are probably hanging out and doing their last farewell. Sort of, hey, let's circle the wagons here and see how far we can make it. Because the other thing that you have to consider is the Steelers haven't had a solid push at quarterback or trying to rebuild and going all in on a younger quarterback. Their entire mindset has been to try to give it one last push, and they've been all in on Aaron Rodgers even when he hadn't committed. So you have a guy that didn't commit, and then you see how far you can actually take it. And after that, I don't know what they expect for long-term roster construction after this. I think they almost have to blow it up. Hanging around, trying to compete, doing like 8 and 8 years, or barely making the playoffs. I just don't know how that's going to be a selling point to free agents. And now, if they do go for like an Arch Manning type rebuild, because I brought up that maybe they'd get him after tanking with like a number 1 pick. the Steelers could have like a 50-50 year, and if Arch Manning doesn't have a great year at Texas, they could pretty much draft him late and hope to develop him and hope that he's a late bloomer. And there are going to be some other quarterbacks in this upcoming draft that Pittsburgh probably could make a run at, because teams have been just drafting so many quarterbacks, and you have quarterbacks floating around like J.J. McCarthy, bringing Kyler Murray. You know they're bringing him in to start. I was surprised that J.J. even hung around as much as he did, where they didn't commit to Kyler. And so it looks like the Vikings potentially moving on, but not even saying J.J. is the future or anything. Just looking at that class, he was like the 6th quarterback taken or 5th quarterback taken or something like that. He was like a top 10, but they had like 4 or 5 quarterbacks taken in the top 10. And a lot of them, you don't know if any of them even worked out. Right? They're talking about, well, we have these quarterbacks coming in and making a name for themselves, and these guys are locked and loaded, and they're going to be great quarterbacks. We see it happen all the time where quarterbacks come in, they look like they're going to be the next big thing, and then look at Justin Herbert. Like, there's nothing that has said that he's going to be a Super Bowl winning quarterback. Nothing out there. All hype. People list him as like one of the greatest quarterbacks. I haven't seen it. Never really looked like he's able to take a team to that next level, unlike someone like Josh Allen, right? That I wasn't even in initially, but after watching him play, he plays on such a different level. And then you have other guys from different draft years like Joe Burrow that came out hot and then battled through injuries, kind of like JJ did. And some guys, man, maybe the injuries take their toll and they're never able to get back to where they were. Because I'm not sold on Joe Burrow. I keep hearing about how the Bengals are going to just be one of the teams to beat because they expect him to be great. I'm not buying it. I'm not buying it at all. So if anything, I wouldn't be surprised if they fell off and they're going to be looking for a quarterback. And then you have guys that seem like sure things not hit. Most quarterbacks just don't make it that long. And even guys that have been pushing and looking like they're going to have a long-term career like Baker Mayfield and Sam Darnold that looked like they made it over that initial hump. They're making strides. They got their team in the playoffs. Darnold won the Super Bowl. They're still not buying them. They're still trying to look for that next guy or saying, well, the Seahawks, that was a fluke. Right? Darnold, that was a fluke. He's not that good. Right? But then the same media guys are all over Herbert saying he's going to be winning a Super Bowl. And I'm sorry, he hasn't elevated to that next level that Sam Darnold did. And maybe Sam Darnold now will be a guy kind of like Matt Stafford where he's just sticking around for 40 years. And everyone's like, all right, he's pretty good. He's pretty good. And I know Stafford put up great stats and had a great offense and all that stuff first. So like Herbert could very easily do that. But for every guy that gets it done, there's also guys like Phillip Rivers on the same team, the Chargers back then, where putting up great stats, looking great, never able to get it done. And even trying to do it like a last hurrah, changing teams and moving on, that doesn't always happen. I mean, Aaron Rodgers would be in the same position right now because he was a guy that won one Super Bowl. Let's say they lost that Super Bowl. He would have nothing other than stats and MVPs and stuff like that. And you'd basically be Peyton Manning 2.0. Would he be pushing harder to try to get a Super Bowl late in his career? Right? Maybe he wouldn't even be with the Steelers. Maybe he'd be making a push to go to a different team like Matt Stafford did when he got traded to the Rams. And it was just like lightning in a bottle. But you already have the Super Bowl. You have all the MVPs. You're more complacent. I don't know how far that's going to go. And then you still have other guys like Lamar Jackson out there that are trying to put it together. And they have a new coach. And meanwhile, the Giants are loading up with Harbaugh type guys where they're getting, I think they picked up Najee Harris, which is another guy that never really stuck or was solid, right? For the Steelers, it looked like, oh, this is going to be the guy. Now he's bouncing around. Not going to happen. Not worth it to have these running backs to go ahead and get out there. Are they even worth the money? I don't know. So we'll see how far we can go ahead and get some of these players in the fantasy football draft. So we have that coming up. Went through the breakdown of how our league works, at least for the draft. And I'm still waiting to see how PPR leagues are going to be sort of affected. I've noticed that the ESPN had been really pushing that towards their daily fantasy thing. And I think the reason is because you have a better chance of getting points, and it's easier to say, oh, well, I'm gonna go ahead and bet on this guy. He might give me like 10 points when he's averaging 10, compared to when you're not playing PPR. A guy could be averaging like 4 or 5 because they're catching a lot of screens and things like that. So let's see how much of a push the daily fantasy starts to get in terms of picking up just different changes for different players. Right? You can get solid points out of a running back that is in maybe the second or third spot on a team, especially like a third down back, because those are guys that you can have kick out that I think the Steelers have really been missing, where you don't have a third down guy coming out of the backfield when you're used to like Le'Veon Bell years ago, able to handle that all 3 downs, catching out of the backfield, a great strength of his. Then you have these other guys that aren't really able to go ahead and put that together. How do you make that next pick? Do you start more running backs? What do you do for flex? Do you just, if you're not in a PPR, are running backs or wide receivers? Like, it's a lot closer. In PPR, it's definitely shifting towards only having a running back that can catch the ball. And then depending on what else is out there, how deep your league is, tight ends have been picking up a good bit of slack, because if you're getting a tight end that always gets red zone looks, 1 touchdown plus like whatever catch, most likely it's like 8 or 9 points easy, even if that's the only catch they have. Where if you're playing like a third down back or something, you're hoping that they're getting 10 targets down the stretch. It also depends on if you have a pass catching running back late in the game, you want your team to kind of be down. So you don't want your third down back to be on one of these great teams that has the lead and they're really milking the clock. You need guys that are having big route runners go down the field, stretch it out, and having the check down to that back. Because on the same drive, you could have 3 checkdowns, 4 checkdowns, make up 4 points very easy. But if you're picking a team that then you're like, oh, they're not going to be winning this game, hopefully they keep it close enough where they're passing and trying to stay in it, and I can get my guy to have some third down catches or just be on the field more. Because just because they're a third down back doesn't mean they only play third down. If they're more of a pass catching specialist, that's what third down's for. If it's third and short, that guy's not going to be out there. There's no rule that says, hey, he's a third down back, let's get him out there. Now you got to put him in a position to succeed. And that's where I see a lot of guys that are like, I have my all-around running back, but in the goal line, they always take him out and put in this guy that dives in and he gets all the points, and then it's a split position. So what do? Go with the guy that's getting goal line touches, and he is touchdown or bust. He'll get like 6 points or maybe 12 points if he gets 2 touchdowns, and that's it. That's all he does. Where your other like your workhorse is going to get most of the carries, but they're missing out on that 6-point bump scoring the touchdowns unless they break one. So it's a different strategy when you're looking at some of the players, especially PPR versus non-PPR. But that's off on a little bit of a tangent. So now let's get into some college football here. We'll see. Looks like the recording is holding up pretty well. So I wonder what the quality is going to be like. I don't think I did my backup. I was going to do a backup recording. So if this didn't work, then it would go ahead. But I was curious to see how this would go. So we're riding high. If this doesn't work, then I'll have to record a smaller segment for this week's show. But the AP poll came out. Ohio State's number 1, which I saw that only like a handful of teams in the past 20 years that were ranked number 1 went on to win the national championship. I also saw a smaller breakdown. Oh man, I know we talked about the guy on the show before, but I can't remember his name. It's like Brett or something like that. I'm drawing a blank. But he said that at their, I think it was for the Atlantic or someone, one of the media said that they had put together a poll of all their votes that went into the AP poll, and Ohio State would have been their number 1 too, but no one actually ranked them number 1 because a lot of their number 1 picks were more spread out. Someone could have Oregon number 1, and then another guy could have them ranked like 6th, where if Ohio State's consistently 2 in every poll, then they get more points, even though they have no first place votes. So I was curious to kind of look through that breakdown and kind of see how far ahead some of these teams were in the rankings. And then they said it wasn't really officially announced. So Ohio State ended up having 40 votes, but the other ones were spread out between Oregon, Notre Dame, Indiana, and Miami. So definitely not as much, which I'm curious to see. So that would mean for, it was McMurphy. Brett McMurphy. So he's the one that had the poll on there. So let's see if we can see what or how much of the difference would be between some of these, because Indiana had 8 first place votes and they're only ranked 6th, right? And so how far would they go down compared to the rest of them? Because like if Miami has ranked 7th, they only have 1 first place vote. Notre Dame's ranked 4th, but they have 6 first place votes. So Indiana, man, people must be ranking them really low. And I keep seeing how Indiana has, like everyone keeps saying, they should be the de facto number 1 because they won and they have a loaded team coming back. They have a new quarterback. The new quarterback to me is the deciding factor. So you're looking at the other 3 teams that had first place votes, Notre Dame, Oregon, and Ohio State. Which quarterback of the 3 do you like? I think a lot of people are putting a lot of credit into Jeremiah Smith and seeing how far he can go ahead and get them in terms of offensive firepower. But the one thing that stands out to me is probably defense. And in that regard, Indiana and Miami might be 2 of the better defenses, and they're ranked lower. Georgia's defense is always going to be good. Notre Dame's going to probably have a good defense. I'm not sold on Ohio State's defense. And Oregon has never been known for having a powerful defense. The other wild card is Texas, because in the coaches poll, Texas and Georgia both had first place votes. Miami did not. So the top 6 are pretty much, actually is it the top 10? Yeah, the top 10 are pretty much the same for both. You have Ohio State, Oregon, Georgia, and then this is where it starts to move around a little bit. Notre Dame, Texas, then Indiana, Miami, A&M, and then Oklahoma and Ole Miss are flipped. So I guess you had 2 teams that are flipped, Texas and Notre Dame, and Ole Miss and Oklahoma. After that, then it starts to move around. Actually, no, it is pretty close in terms of the entire ranking. To get to the bottom, Clemson was not ranked in the top 25 in the AP poll. Instead, they had Louisville. And let's see, was there any other differences here? No. The rest of the teams were the exact same, just slightly different order. LSU, Texas Tech, Alabama, USC, BYU, Michigan, Washington, Penn State, SMU, Tennessee, Utah, Iowa, Houston, and Missouri. I was surprised that the Big Ten and the SEC pretty much had almost all of the teams this year, where it was only like a handful of other ones. I think I sent it to Matt. He's trying to connect right now. So we'll see if we can go ahead and get him on. I'm going to try to send it to him again. So let's see what happens. All right, we'll see if we can go ahead and get that fixed up, or if Matt can hop on. I'm not really 100% sure because now my audio is going in and out. Well, this will be the first test, so this show will probably be a disaster of topics. But looking at the AP poll, now you have teams that are kind of going through, and it's almost like we've been saying with a self-fulfilling prophecy. Teams that are not in the Big Ten or the SEC, they're going to be scheduled against teams that are not ranked. And then you're going to have teams from these other conferences. That's why, to me, it was such a big deal now for the SEC to have a 9-game schedule. I think people underestimated that before, where you're going to have one more loss now, no matter who you play in schedule, right? There's another chance that like Georgia's going to play a team that they haven't played before. And whether they win or lose, they're either going to get bumped up, bumped down, or they're going to probably eliminate someone else that shouldn't deserve to be ranked that high. Because a lot of these are ranked based on the last year playoffs, which is why I think, and the biggest discussion right now is, should teams try to make the playoffs as their main goal compared to playing a tougher schedule and maybe not making the playoffs, but you know that your team couldn't compete because you had 4 tough games and you lost maybe 2 of them. So you're like, do I take the first round exit? But to me, a team like Texas A&M, I can't remember off the top of my head if they won their playoff game last year, or even if they were, I'm assuming they were in the playoffs from what I remember. They are now ranked high because of that placement, and everyone assumes they're going to take that next step. Same with Texas. They're like, well, Texas keeps being in the playoffs. They keep being competitive, and there's no reason to discount them. Now, if they start losing multiple games and then not making the playoffs, then you have a real head scratcher. Like, why is this team ranked? Right. And then other teams that are going to kind of fill in there. That's why another team like Texas Tech, they're getting the benefit of the doubt right now, being ranked, even though their quarterback had issues, and I don't even know whatever became of that. Right. So what are they going to do with that next level of support coming in whenever you have just teams that are out there that are trying to jump? The rest of the conferences, I mean, are basically at this point the old group of 5, whether they want to admit it or not. You're going to have to pretty much win your conference to get in. And that's why I've been pushing so hard for automatic bids for each conference. Even the other ones, like the group of 5, group of 6, whatever they're left with now. I want those teams to have a chance in the playoffs. And the only way to get that is by having a greater chance at making that jump. All right, looks like Matt was able to get on. What's up, cuz? I don't know if I can hear you, but I don't know if that's because of my headphones. It almost sounded like I got you for a second. I don't know if you can hear me now.
I got you now.
All right, cool. Going through the AP poll, dude, what'd you think of the rankings? Pretty close to the coaches poll.
I mean, I really wasn't surprised. I feel like there's such a bias on the side of the big 2 conferences that they're going to overload them so that they can justify the end of the year. Oh, it's, we have to have 45 teams in from these 2 conferences.
But I think it's going to kill the regular season for some of those other games. Like, they can't put the ACC back on, like, the Big East Thursday night game. Can they?
They could.
Because I was looking at, is it Florida State and NC State this year? I was looking to see if we could meet up for a game, and it looked, no, maybe it's Florida State and Pitt. It's like a Friday night.
Yeah, they they have so many like random Friday games and Thursday games and everything else.
Well, that's what I was looking at. Even the NC State Virginia, because I ended up checking out Virginia's campus the other week. And I thought, oh, this wouldn't be such a bad drive to go see NC State play. They're not even playing the ACC. I think they still have that non-conference first game of the year scheduled. And I'm like, at that point, why? You're just giving yourself another loss. You're like playing a 10-game conference schedule for no reason.
Well, and at one point, I didn't have an issue with playing a tougher out-of-conference schedule, but there's literally nothing to it anymore. Like, you almost get penalized if you want to try to play a tougher non-conference. Because if you lose a game, it's going to be held against you because you're not in a Power 2.
And that's what I wonder with the SEC having 9 games now, half their teams are going to have another loss just based on that's how it's going to work. Now, are they going to still rank them higher and say, well, an 8-loss SEC or an 8-win SEC team is better than a 10-win ACC because of the extra loss? Like, it's going to be crazy. They've never been able to kind of justify that, even with Notre Dame.
No, that was
Notre Dame lose to.
That was always the issue. Was that they would just say, well, they lost to a big conference opponent, so you could lose to one or two random things, and it wouldn't come back to bite you.
Well, that's where I think if you have a tougher schedule, like there's no point. Like Notre Dame and USC were moving games around and trying to get on there, and I thought, just quit, dude. Not have it. Because if the big conference teams realize that there's no point in playing Notre Dame's going to have to join a conference because there's no way they're going to have the ACC is going to let them play 9 games casually, right? Because none of those teams are going to want another tough game for no reason. They're not going to get a bump. If NC State beats Notre Dame in a year, no amount of 50-point win is going to get them enough credit to jump where they should be. It'll just be like, Notre Dame blip. They must not be that good, or maybe we should bump them down a little bit.
Now, have you been hearing anything as far as this whole Save College Sports and potential movement in the ACC?
So I don't know what the college is going to be able to do, because there's a couple things that are floating around right now. And I was actually hearing that, remember how I had said a couple weeks ago that Division III, I thought that they were pretty much going to get eaten up first. Because, I don't know how, I think the divisions are going to kind of rearrange before we see a breakaway, honestly. I think what will happen is, a lot of people think that the D2 is going to be the one where they're going to actually lower themselves to D3. So it's going to kind of be like a replacement where any of the D3 schools that just can't compete or that are shutting down, they're going to kind of just drop out, like I said. But D3 is not going to go away. What will happen is D2, they can't pay NIL, and they're getting guys that maybe, hey, I committed to Michigan, played a year, got hurt. Now I'm not playing. I'm going to transfer, no D1 offers. I'm going to go D2, hoping to get some NIL, and it's like a total different world. And they have to pay them scholarships for D2. So the way around it is, if we drop to D3, we're saving us a ton of money because of every college and Title IX. We don't have to pay scholarships anymore. So then we can just focus on the NIL part that we are already having to do anyway. And you're kind of just saving your bottom line. Now, what's that going to do for Olympic sports? I've been calling it where I think some schools, just like kids right now with travel, they're going to specialize. Where think of the Big East old basketball schools where you're at an old Catholic school, you're a basketball school. You go there, that's going to be your sport. Some of these smaller D2, D3, I know some that were really good in baseball, they're just going to be baseball, softball schools. And I think they're going to just kind of naturally say, where can we actually invest that gets us visibility in our neighborhood, whatever, to help us bring in students, because that's the entire point. If no one's going to the games or doing anything, why are you spending money? Like the admins of the school are going to say, what are we doing here? Where we're just blowing money. So then I think at that point, the ACC, if they're able to hang around, I really don't see like the Big Ten and the SEC breaking apart, because I really think that if they do, they're really underestimating how many fans like it, because it's not like the NFL. If they go to an NFL light mode, people are just not going to watch. And I think they're going to hit that rock bottom where they'll be begging to come back. I think naturally, if they kind of just wait it out and let some of those schools jump from D2, and then you'll see another push back where maybe some schools that jumped up, like down here, like East Carolina or App State, schools that are kind of on that level, they're never going to compete with NIL right now. I could see them jumping back to like a D2 level. And still, I think then the schedule will kind of shift, where if there's only 60 something teams that are left in D1, then you'll go back to remember how they used to play like the AA schools or whatever. That will kind of be the warm-up game. That will replace kind of like a preseason where it's like, oh, NC State's playing East Carolina, an old rivalry game. They're different levels now, and both teams can compete for like their own version of the national championship, per se.
Because a lot of the stuff I was seeing was from Florida State fans was rumored that it's going to accelerate the potential exit from the ACC, because when you look at locking, like how they're going to try to lock conferences and not allow movement for 10 or 20 years, they're going to want to try to make a move sooner rather than later, even if it means having to front money on the front end and go into some other situation where they're down the road having to take a partial buy-in and trying to get themselves into one of those Power 2 conferences.
And I think the division shift is like the workaround for that, because if the conference doesn't exist, they can't be locked into it. Right? It's like the old thing, even with like the old TV rights. Everyone had said like the Big East, that they're not going to dissolve completely, right? Even though they really don't exist anymore in terms of football, because they had enough votes for all the football schools to leave. And so now they're just kind of like a basketball thing. Look at like the Pac-12, where you might have some kind of hanging around. I just don't think, in terms, especially like the government, they're not going to lock in schools for some of these big states that's against the interest of the state. Right? You have, I mean, they're major state schools there, especially now with like the Cal and stuff in there. You have Florida, North Carolina, Virginia. You have some other states like Pitt and Pennsylvania. Then you have like Syracuse in New York. What other New York school is really included in a major conference? Right? I really just don't think that all these politicians are going to really lock them in with no way of getting out. They'll find a way out. It is going to take a block like that, where I still think the safest route is I'm just going to pick like one school down here, like Wake Forest, because they're the ones that always gets rumored. Like if they're not going to compete, why not make a move down with like App State and East Carolina and go like to this new D2 level? Because I think that's what's going to accelerate it. When they try to lock in, the NIL is happening so fast that we've seen how many schools like start to close now or drop sports and things already. In 5 years, there's going to be such a shift. And then it just becomes, the TV networks still need content, right? What were they showing? They're showing like people running up slip and slides on ESPN. Like they're going to show a Wake Forest East Carolina football game on ESPN, whatever. Heck, I was perusing the ACC network, looking to see if soccer started, to check and see if NC State was on TV. They were showing a Missouri And was it Arkansas? It was like a total SEC game on the ACC network. And I thought, how hard up are they? Where it's like, hey, click on the ACC network. I thought, did I skip it? No, it was clearly a Missouri day. It made no sense, man. I'm like, you can't show me anything. Heck, show me like marching band practice from the ACC. Because I know, like when I drove by like Virginia, they were doing it. Like marching band's been on campus for a while now, getting ready for football season. Show me that. Don't show me Missouri highlights. Are you insane? And maybe that's a push where they're like, Missouri, you're going to be kicked out of the SEC. We don't really want you here. So we're going to just put your highlights on ACC network, and then naturally people won't even know that you were never in the ACC to begin with. And you're just going to kind of shift over there and be there. Because I think right now, well, the hard thing is with the SEC and the 9-game schedule is they've never added any filler teams. Right. They were like, oh, we're going to take the bet. Well, I mean, I guess they added Missouri and A&M. So what am I talking about? But they added like Texas and Oklahoma, the top 2 in the Big 12. And then they were like, man, now they're beating our teams. Are you serious? Like, what did you expect? Did they turn into like Nebraska,
they wanted the revenue from the fan base without competition to top end.
I'm surprised, not going to lie, how well Oklahoma has been competing. And maybe it's because Venables is the architect behind Clemson, which very well could be, right? Clemson's been garbage since he's been gone, and he has Oklahoma like near the top 10 around where Clemson was hanging out. It seems like they kind of just replaced each other. So maybe that could be the starting point of how Oklahoma stays relevant. But like, what if they had went the other direction and they kept Lincoln Riley? Because he's done nothing. Right? He has to be on the hot seat. I don't know. Didn't we go through the hot seat list last week? He's like not even, like Norvell's higher than him. How? Lincoln Riley just won nothing.
Low pressure, maybe. I don't know.
Norvell just went undefeated like a couple years ago. That wasn't that long ago. And they're like, no, he's number 1 hot seat. Lincoln Riley winning 7 games, check mark, right? He's in, baby. Doesn't matter how bad because I keep hearing like USC is taking a step. And I'm like, well, baby steps? I don't understand what you're talking about. Making that jump, making the playoffs. The same with Nebraska. Someone said Matt Rule could win like 6 games and be safe. And I thought, why? Right?
Well,
it's like their new normal.
It's not as attractive of a job because he's not winning.
Yeah, but with the money, all it is NIL now. Nebraska has money. They sell out their stadium. They might not have like the top end dollars, but you can't tell me that some of these other schools.
You can't just. I mean, Texas A&M is the prime example that you can't just throw money at a problem and think you're going to solve it.
Well, that's why I think you need to have a coach that's going to be able to take the money and take that next step. Like I look at Whittingham and Michigan so far, and I'm not saying that he's like, oh, we don't even know. Michigan can go out and go like 3-7 this year or something. But looking at his recruiting and how he's recruited at the same level at Utah, you come to a school that has a bigger national pool, and he's already recruiting right now near the top 10, and they keep getting the same type of recruits that they've been getting. Maybe not as high as like what Sharon Moore was bringing in, but you're hoping the coaching's better. Right? Like Nebraska, their safest bet would have been to try to pull like Whittingham or someone away years ago. Like a Kirk Ferentz. I know that he probably wouldn't shift in conference. But there has to be like an older coach that has shown success, and that's the kind of guy that Nebraska should get. They keep going for like the hot hire. Scott Frost. Oh, look at how fast he got them up. Then they get Matt Rule. They're like, remember him at like Baylor? Awesome. And they're never really getting a guy that has sustained success. Like they need their Urban Meyer. Is what they need. Like when Ohio State brought him in. Because even Jim Tressel was like their up and comer. And it seems like that's what Nebraska's trying to do. Like they're like, we're going to try to get our version of Jim Tressel. Like some coach that's like winning at like a smaller school, and we're not going to have to pay him that much. And with NIL, yeah, I think it's going to start to turn into college basketball where, you know, like it's in the tournament and everyone's talking about like the same old coach every year, like Tom Izzo or like Coach K when he was there. And it's like all these old guys. Yeah, because that's what's going to happen. They're just going to recruit themselves. Like, I'll go play for this coach. He's been in the playoffs every year. All right, we're in. We got NIL. You got the baseline. But schools that don't do that, because like that's where Oklahoma's at like right now. They don't need the top guys. They don't need the top money. They just need to be winning enough to put them in. Because like, what's the difference between when Lincoln Riley was there? They didn't really win the playoffs anyway. So
they qualified for it though.
Yeah, that's exactly so. Like that's
and that was when there was only 4. So with the expanded format, I mean, I think that's the minimum standard now. Is get yourself in the door, and if you get, then you can use that as a recruiting tool.
Well, that's what I was looking at here, where you look at the top teams that are in like the top 25 and everyone's saying, well, they keep ranking these teams. That's the same teams every year. I'm like, yeah, it's the same teams that have been competing for a playoff spot in the last 12 years since the playoffs started. Like for some people, especially the media, it seems like they're like the older guys that were around in like the 90s and like there were different teams. It's like, well, buddy, if a team was good in the 90s and has fallen off, like Miami until recently, or like even Nebraska, like they're probably not going to make a comeback. If they didn't make a comeback immediately with NIL like Miami did, let's be real, they're not ever making a comeback. Like Nebraska would have to bring in, like I said, they would have to bring in a coach like Whittingham that has won enough, knows that like, all right, man, I've been so close. I need a chance to win a national championship. Because like they could grab the guy from BYU because he has to be feeling it. He turned down Penn State, right? Is it, I forget, I'm going to mispronounce his name. It's like Satake or whatever. So he's right there at BYU. If he keeps missing the playoffs, he's going to want to jump, right?
He may not.
What better
maybe
place?
He's content being a Mormon.
I mean, maybe. Well, they are one of the rare ones, and I think SMU's on the same level, where like Lashley, there's no reason to jump because the pressure's lower, and they're still paying to get you one of the top rosters, where you can at least compete for conference championships every year. And I think that's where the ACC made their mistake. When you let someone like SMU that has money buy in, it'd be like letting Texas Tech buy their way in. Like, okay, now you have a team that's just like paying NIL and they're like starting to compete in every sport. Like, awesome.
I think it's funny with them right now because they're in this spot where everyone's canceling them and they're like, no, we don't want any part of it. Because they know they're just going to spend ridiculous amounts of money.
And you can only pay so much, and then you have to win like A&M. Like they're paying enough to be ranked around the top 10 spot, but like they haven't made any upward movement. They've had multiple coaches. They've had national championship winning coaches. That's where like Indiana, people aren't buying them, even though they just won the national championship. I know they have a new quarterback, but at least you have a coach that knows how to win. Right. I'm curious to see like Texas is going all out and paying. They're like similar to A&M. How is their paying better than what A&M's doing? It's not really. You need to have a coach that can win. Winning has to count for something. Same with Oregon. I don't understand how Oregon is ranked in the top like 2 or 3 every year when they haven't won anything ever in the history. Wasn't like they were like world beaters in the 80s or something, like Notre Dame, and people were like, they're going to make it. They're coming back, baby. It's like, no, they are who they are. You might as well just rank them 12th until they prove you wrong. Just say, we know you won the Big Ten. I know they won the Big Ten, which is even funnier that like Ohio State can't win it. Right? And then people were like, they're number one though. They even their national championship, they weren't the Big Ten champs that year. And it's like they are the poster for a team that won the national championship that shouldn't have won it because they weren't that good, which cracks me up. Because it's like, hey, these like 12th ranked teams can't really win the playoffs, and they're like, Ohio State did, Miami almost did, right? So at some point though, you got to get over the hump. They got it done. Ryan Day got it done. And now they're ranked number one. I don't think there's like a top team this year, to be honest. But we need a BYU or even Texas Tech. I know they're spending a ton of money, but we need a team from a non-big conference to win the national championship. It can't be Notre Dame, though. I don't think people would appreciate it if it was Notre Dame. And
no.
Same with like Miami. That's why I said maybe Texas Tech. I think it needs to be like a BYU, an SMU, maybe a Utah. That'd be crazy if Utah got rid of Whittingham and then won the national championship. But like Louisville's on here. I mean, Braum was close, but I think you still have to recruit at that higher level. That's why, like, when I saw Washington getting hyped, because I know I'm a big Jed Fish fan. When he was at Michigan, I thought that was like one of Harbaugh's best offenses. And now he's their coach, and they're like putting in money to try to recruit. And it's like, okay. All right. But now they're taking the spot of someone that really should be from the ACC or the Big 12. Because like Arizona State, like with Dillingham, he stayed there to compete. People have totally they wrote him off. So like if he continues to like win and maybe get back, because he didn't take the Michigan job, which remember, we don't even know the truth. They said they never offered him. He said he did get offered, then he was like, then he backtracked on it. So like I don't know what to believe. But if he keeps winning, that could be a Nebraska type guy. Where somebody like that keeps winning. I mean, Brahms, I think that's his alma mater. Maybe that's Dillingham's alma mater too. I can't remember. But like, how much can you take being disrespected every year when you could go to a team that's hungry, like Nebraska, where it's very simple to get people to like transfer from, say, Louisville to Nebraska, I would think, to follow the coach and try to make a run. Because like Signetti took those guys from JMU. So it's not like he was like taking them from another big time school. So if you have guys you've coached up, you can make that jump. You can make it. Because now JMU's ranked, or not ranked, they're receiving votes. And that's the one thing that kind of hurts me, is I always want every conference to have an auto bid. With these loaded AAP and coaches pools where there's no mid-majors now, what's the point? Right? They should have banded together when I told them to and forced an auto bid for their conferences, because now you're going to get ranked. They put that stupid Notre Dame thing in where as long as they're ranked like near top 12, they get in over you. That was a dumb move. But they wanted the money, I guess. Right?
Still trying to skirt the rules. Not have to join a conference.
I know I've been messing around with this for a while now. Is there anything you want to talk about? Because I know you hopped on late.
We're hot and heavy in camp right now. Things have been going pretty good, staying healthy.
Do you have the scrimmage this Saturday?
Scrimmage this Saturday. So if you're in the area, come on down. Starting at 10. We're back to basics this year. I feel like we're in a good spot. Just young guys developing, and we'll see what we got.
All right, well, cool. We're going to go ahead and see if the audio works from this. But hopefully this works in time for football season. I know we had some hiccups today. But let me know if there's anything you want us to talk about. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.